Welcome back to the Locked On Browns podcast. G. Bush, Jeff Lloyd, first segment. AFC Championship game. Chiefs come out on top over the Bengals. Also, we'll look at the NFC as well. Look up front, no further than defensive line. We'll kind of look at that other teams are using to get to the championship game. Is this a blueprint that Cleveland Browns can use to get to the playoffs next year? Also, we'll take a look at Ethan Pocic. An article came out and talked about specifically him being one of the top 5 centers and the number 1 center in free agency. They have a tender on him of about 4 years and $28 million to stay or to go. Will the Cleveland Browns have enough in the billfold to take care of Ethan Pocic? What does that mean for the rest of the offensive line? Me and Jeff will talk about the pros and cons of keeping Ethan Pocic. And then finally, since we're talking about money, we'll get to money overall. We'll look at the salary cap going up. What does that mean for the Cleveland Browns, going up about $16 million for the rest of the league? What does that mean? Does that mean the Browns can go out and get another player for $16 million? We'll break it all down, tell you what that means for the Browns and the rest of the league, and we'll do all that coming up on the next episode of the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Another week starts here on Locked On Browns after very, very exciting Sunday, Championship Sunday. Philadelphia Eagles, big win over the San Francisco 49ers. We're going to get some thoughts on that. Kansas City Chiefs outlasting the Cincinnati Bengals. And stop. Patrick Mahomes was 2 full strides out of bounds. Don't touch him. And you're not in that situation. I don't want to hear about the officials. Any quarterback in the league gets that call. Heartbreaking moment for the kid, but let's be honest. It was a penalty. It was a blatant penalty. It is what it is. But there's 2 takeaways from both those games. And G and I, we're going to break it down here for you a little bit, and hopefully this is something that we can see translate here a little bit for all of our Browns fans. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd from the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, 92.3 The Fan radio personality, Garrett Bush, at GBush91. Today's episode of Locked On Browns is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than the PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. That's PrizePicks.com. Promo code LOCKEDON. As we said, and congratulations, obviously, first and foremost, Philadelphia Eagles, and of course the Kansas City Chiefs, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, first Super Bowl featuring obviously 2 quarterbacks of color. This is going to be something that we're probably not really going to talk about much in the years to come, as there are a lot of great young quarterbacks. But there was always going to be a first, and obviously this is one. The Kelsey brothers, each one of these guys already possessing a Super Bowl ring, now getting to compete against each other in a Super Bowl. I imagine their podcast is going to be killer over the next couple episodes lead up to this game, G. Really looking forward to that. For the Kelsey family, I don't even know where you go with this, man. Because it's going to be one of the greatest nights of your lives, but you also know it's going to be one of the worst nights of your life. If you're the Kelsey parents, obviously. But getting into the game here, and I think we all kind of feel the same way. And we talked about this, when we were talking about the game. I didn't know if necessarily what Brock Purdy could do in that game. Obviously, we all felt it was a really tough spot for him to go into. All the momentum. Now he's injured. And obviously there wasn't anything he could do. Then you throw in Josh Johnson, who's been in the NFL. I think he's 17 professional football teams, some of that number. He goes out. So you basically get to a point where there's nothing, and I mean nothing the San Francisco 49ers can do. I mean, what do you do? There is no plan for once your 4th quarterback goes down. There's no plan. So obviously, and it turned out to be a rout. Obviously, didn't get much of a contest. Eagles came out. They were, very effective running the ball. The defense played very well. Defensive line play, which led to both quarterbacks leaving the game, which led to turnovers that the Eagles were able to capitalize on. So Philadelphia, Kansas City. The Chiefs-Bengals game, I thought it was a really, really good game. I mean, a little bit different from the ones we've seen between these two teams. Obviously, these games are usually high-scoring affairs. The Bengals did everything they could, and they played very similar to how they had this playoff season, how they did last playoff season. One of those things where, like, don't give us a shot late in the game. We're going to stick around as long as we can, and you'll capitalize on one mistake. The Mahomes run, and this is the thing when you get to a stage like this, you have so many people on social media talking about games, and then you can tell how many of them maybe really don't watch games in depth. Oh, they're not calling holding. When do they ever call holding? Never call holding. It just doesn't happen. But obviously, Mahomes gets hit out of bounds late, changes everything. Bucker with a walk-off field goal. Travis Kelce, kind of reminding some people that maybe we should, not celebrate anything about a football game until you maybe have actually won the football game. But big takeaways for me. And these were both my picks. I thought the Chiefs in an underdog role, for me, it just seemed like it was unfair. Like so many people thought Cincinnati had won this game before it had been played. Philadelphia, I just thought the situation was going to be too much for Brock Purdy. Sadly, we didn't really get to see if the opportunity was there or whether it was too big for Brock Purdy. Chiefs, Eagles, moving on. But the most thing I took away from this is watching teams with outstanding players, outstanding depth along their defensive lines, and it becoming a factor late in the game to change the swing of the game and allow you to win the game. And this is where the Browns are at. You just don't have the horses. You brought in the guy. I'm sure you're promising getting him the horses, but hopefully a blueprint here for the Browns.
Yeah, I think I took a look at those games, and one thing that I noticed out of all those four teams is even though the San Francisco 49ers really were handcuffed, I noticed one thing about the defense. I watched the defense. Very few missed tackles, very few missed assignments, hard-nosed football, flying to the football, the level of speed, the intensity that they played with, and watching those guys up front and watch them go battle, play after play after play after play, relentless after the quarterback. And you notice one thing, you notice the level of guys, the competence and the all pros up front. I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles, to put it in perspective, has 70 sacks. 70 sacks between their front guys. We're not talking about backers, and 70 sacks. The guys up front, we've talked about them, Fletcher Cox and Hargroves and Riddick and all those guys. They fly to the football. You look at what Chris Jones did in that game. You got Bosa playing for the 49ers, Armstead for the 49ers. You look at DJ Reader, guys like that, Hendrickson. These are guys that were putting pressure on the quarterback, putting pressure on great guys. And it just goes to show you, in the offseason, the Cleveland Browns, to get where they need to go, they're going to need to upgrade that position. They're going to need to have some of that same thing. And they're going to, and for my money, I wasn't really thinking about this, wasn't even a Section 4 linebackers, but I will say this. I think there's something to be said for bringing back a guy like Anthony Walker. Because I feel like when you're implementing these defenses, when you want Schwartz to implement a defense, I know Anthony Walker is coming off of a injury. But one of the things that I saw, and I always watch these games where I take a look at what I'm seeing on the field in the championship games, and I'm comparing them in real time to where the Cleveland Browns need to go if they want to get there. And the one thing I know is linebacker play, accountability. There was no guys getting frustrated with each other. There was guys lining up, getting ready to go and clean football from a perspective of this is how you need to play championship football. And so to me, I think it would be a thing that you should bring back Anthony Walker, because I think you need to be implementing those styles of football. And Jim Schwartz is right from Philadelphia. He understands what they got going on over there. He understands what it took to get that team there as an assistant, as a person who watched them build that type thing over there. So I think when you watch teams that make it to the championship, I think it's important to see how they dominate and how they won. The two things that jumped out at me most, I thought that you got to have a big-time receiver somewhere, and your receiver has to make plays, and you got to have a lot of those guys with some depth, with some ability to play, not just your first tier, because by that time, you're talking second tier. But another thing that took out of me is the waves of defensive linemen, the athleticism, the multiple ways you can play them, and how many of those guys you need in order to get after the quarterback. And so I think that those are two areas the Cleveland Browns have noted, and I think those are areas that they need to get better at.
Look, in this time of year, I mean, everybody always wants to talk about, the offensive side. You got to be a team that is built. You got to have a kicker. You got to have a defense. You got to have an offense. And most of the time to make a successful playoff run is because in each individual game, it may have been one of them that changed momentum, secured the victory for you. It's balance, man. It is all about balance in this league. We're going to switch it up here. Actually, Browns have an interesting situation on their hands. They ended up with a star center last year. A lot of us believe that star center probably wouldn't even gotten a shot if it wasn't for an August injury. Now, the question is, you're going to pay the piper for the guy who had a hell of a year in the middle for Coach Bill Callahan in this offensive line. Jeff Lloyd, Garrett Bush, your latest Locked On Browns. If you took Patrick Mahomes for over 300 passing yards, if you took Marquez Scantling for over 100 yards, you know what? You probably had a good night last night on PrizePicks. It's a simple site. It's easy to put together a lineup. How it works is simple. You pick 2 to 6 players with your lineup. You are going to go ahead and you are going to play against just their projections. You're not going to play against somebody else's lineup. You can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. You're not competing against other people. Again, you versus the projections available. PrizePicks projections are available on any sport that you watch: the NFL, the NBA, MLB, NHL, hell, Euro basketball if it interests you. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is just that easy. Safe, fast withdrawals. Currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. You deposit 100, PrizePicks will give you 100. You deposit 50, PrizePicks will give you 50. Don't forget to enter the promo code at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100.
Welcome back to the Locked On Browns podcast. Garrett Bush in the building, Jeff Lloyd in the building. AFC, NFC game last week. Guess what? We got the little awkward week between the Super Bowl. But guess what? We still got hot Browns topics. We got NFL topics. We got all the topics ready to go right here on Locked On Browns podcast. You can find us wherever you download your podcast. You can also look at our bright, shiny, beautiful faces if you want to on YouTube. And make sure you subscribe to YouTube at Locked On Browns podcast there as well. Jeff, we talked about some of the salary cap ramifications coming up, but last segment we got into the AFC, NFC championship games, what we saw that the Browns could replicate or duplicate and get into to try to get themselves into that those positions moving forward in the future. Let's talk about now some of the guys that played well for the team. That's a good thing that you did have some people playing well. You got Ethan Pocic. Ethan Pocic is one of the guys who played for the most part of the season last year as the number one center in all of the NFL. And one thing that is a good problem to have is when you got guys who perform or outperform what they usually give you. A guy who, we got late after Harris went down. And Nick Harris went down, and he was slotted to be the guy from Washington that was your swing guy. We let go a top guy, right? Let go somebody because we had Nick Harris, right? And he gets hurt during 2 days in training camp, first preseason game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Ethan Pocic comes in and not only doesn't miss a beat, he comes in and anchors the offensive line. Now, the problem with that is now he's an unrestricted free agent. We know what we've done. We just signed Jack Conklin, $60 million extension. You already have Wyatt Teller, who was a Pro Bowler, a guy who you got and you signed to a deal a couple of years ago. You got one of the best left guards in one of the best linemen in all of football, and Joe Batonio, and as well, you have a guy on his 5th year of his rookie deal, and now we have to figure out, do we want to give a guy at center who is in the prime of his career but only has 1 year production, do we want to give him 28, 35, could be upwards of $40 million to anchor the Browns' offensive line, snap the football to Deshaun Watson. With a guy like Bill Callahan and a guy like Nick Harris coming off of injury. Jeff, the question is, do we keep Ethan Pocic, or do we kind of roll the dice and say, well, let's go back to Nick Harris because we can't have everybody on the offensive line making $10 to $15 million?
There's obviously a little bit to unpack here. Ethan Pocic didn't come in until beginning of April, so that means you literally almost went about 3.5 weeks where basically nobody was chasing down Ethan Pocic to come play for them. Of course, you start with what your demands are, and then obviously you get to the point where you're only signing a 1-year contract and $1.8 million. And the Browns' intention obviously was for Ethan Pocic to never play. Nick Harris gets hurt first or second snap in Jacksonville. Obviously, his season over essentially before it began. Ethan Pocic goes in. Ethan Pocic plays very well for this team, and you saw it right away. He saw it in Week 1 in Carolina. I still remember the run. Nick Chubb running behind me. Ethan Pocic, they're in space. There's nobody around, and Nick's like, well, there's nobody for you to block. So I'm not going to let you set up. I'm not going to set you up for a block anymore. I'm just going to leave you here, kid, on the side of the road. You've done your part. But you have avenues here. Look, Ethan Pocic, by far, best season of his life in the NFL. Not even close, no question about it. Now, if you're somebody on the outside looking to, sign Ethan Pocic, well, I can't get Bill Callahan here. He's not playing next to Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller here. Is he worth that type of money? Is Ethan Pocic worth that type of money solo? Is he worth that type of money as part of this offensive line? And keep in mind, there were times this offensive line, as good as they are, there's still times where it's just not happening. We had issues, running the ball at times, had issues in short yardage at the time. So the money thing for Ethan Pocic, I'm not sure how high it's going to get. And it's always difficult with centers because technically there's only 32 of them in the league. You know what I'm saying? There ain't a lot of center jobs, and a lot of people are certainly satisfied and happy with the guys, they have there already. For the Browns, you got to start thinking at some point here, and with Bill Callahan signing extension to stay here for a while, do we necessarily have to give Bill top-notch players? Obviously, we've seen him take some players and obviously develop them. Wyatt Teller being one of them. Ethan Pocic, certainly another one of them. Do you look at maybe, if Ethan Pocic costs a little bit more than we currently would like, where are we with maybe our left tackle, who Jedrick Wills could be going to his final season with the Cleveland Browns here in 2023? There's a lot of options. If I'm the Browns, I'm pursuing it. I'm interested. I think they probably have a number in mind. And I'm not saying they're going to run back to Nick Harris and give him the opportunity, because even still coming off the ACL, there's going to be competition here. But I think there's a budget and there's a number in mind for the Browns in regards to Ethan Pocic. But I think the issue is going to be, you go shop yourself, or other teams interested. If somebody else is interested to hire him out, I don't think the Browns are going to get into a bidding war for Ethan Pocic. I just don't see it happening. But for Ethan Pocic, look, you want to talk about a guy who maybe didn't know exactly where his NFL life was a year ago when he did sign this 1-year contract with the Browns. Opportunities open. He has to be the starting center. He's playing with a very established offensive line. He is playing with a great offensive line, teacher in Bill Callahan. If this works out that Ethan Pocic moves on, you got respect for him, because the guy went to a great situation, worked his tail off, and it turns out that somebody's going to hand him $30 million. God bless you, man.
Yeah, this is going to be a rough one. I think that you are correct. The Browns have a number in mind. The $24 million was what, I think there's a website who projects what somebody's open market value is. Now, that's just a projection. I mean, if there's nobody else bidding for that, the Browns, I think, would be happy to bring back a starting center of his caliber, giving the Browns another opportunity to have one of the best offensive lines in the league as well. However, you do have to start looking forward a little bit to other positions that you need to fill. We've talked about the defensive tackle position. We've talked about the positions as far as receiver, bringing another guy to pair with Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones. And some people say you need another linebacker, a couple linebackers to bring back in order to make the defense whole. So I think the Cleveland Browns at a certain price will be happy to bring back Ethan Pocic. But if there is a bidding war, so to speak, I think center is not one of the mainstays that the Browns would think about. because you were comfortable with a guy like Nick Harris as your starting center last year. If you could take that money and move it other places, I think the Browns will be excited to do that. And kind of looking forward into our next segment when we get into the cap, kind of talk about some of the money that you can pair if you do have to take away from aka John Johnson III if he is a cap casualty, or a Ethan Pocic moving on, and you can have that money to allocate to other things. How much money is going to be available to move, Jeff? I think we'll come back and talk about that too as well.
Absolutely. We're going to get to that part here. And if anybody didn't see today, and I'll be honest, I don't know if I knew it or I forgot it. Andrew Berry has a twin brother. Andrew Berry's twin brother has left the high finance world of a high position with Goldman Sachs. And Andrew Berry's brother, and I forget his name, also begins with an A as well, is going to go work for the Philadelphia Eagles. So, twin brother kind of following his, and, I know a lot of people wonder maybe why Philly, but, of course, Andrew had that stint there. And why not go work for one of the best run professional sports in all of professional sports? So kind of interesting with that. We're going to get here our final segment again, and salary cap related. Pretty significant bump this year. We're going to get to all that. Jeff Lloyd, Garrett Bush, your latest Locked On Browns. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner with Locked On because they are the #1 sports book in America, FanDuel. And if you were new to FanDuel, that is even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. Me personally, you're going to look at this, me, I always like, maybe bet on first touchdown. Always seems like a tight end, Travis Kelce, maybe Dallas Goedert. Obviously, you can bet on over-unders, Mahomes, passing yards, Jalen Hurts. Maybe you're going to look at the rushing yards. The FanDuel Sportsback app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Best of all, you get paid on your winnings instantly. FanDuel, I've had zero issues since we made the switch. Everything goes smooth, quick, easy. The site's always functioning. Every day they are in there updating their odds, either good or bad, in a bet in your favor. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Yeah, we want to thank everybody for taking advantage and watching us wherever you get your platforms. Right now, you can check us out on the Roku app. We're there. You can also get us wherever you get your podcast. And thank you for making us your first listener of each and every day. And obviously, you can definitely catch us on YouTube. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. Sometimes people tweet more than they catch out of other things. We always tweet out the episodes. We tweet the episodes out on YouTube. So if you're catching us on Twitter, you'll be able to catch us and watch the episodes by just clicking the link that we put in our tweets when we post all of our content. So there's a couple ways you can get us. So make sure you follow us at Locked On Browns on Twitter as well. League news goes out, and this year cap goes up about $16 million, Jeff. So now what we got is an opportunity to check out some of the money available. I think you said it's 220, so what, $22 million, right?
224.8. So
right.
A $16.6 million jump.
There you go.
2.8.2.
Now, that 16.8 does not mean you can just go out and just get you $16.8 million in a player. There are other things that are currently in effect, and one of those things are contracts that we already have kicking in. The biggest contract kicking in is Deshaun Watson's contract, which is now on the books. You now feel the full weight of what a franchise quarterback is going to make. Those are some big time numbers, especially when you're talking about 1 year cap totals. Also, you got a Denzel Ward $100 million deal that is now kicking in. You look at the type of players you play, and this is where it gets to when you start looking at the success of a team and you start to say, okay, well, look, all right, Are we getting enough out of our players? Are we getting enough out of this coaching staff? Are we where we want to be? Because Frank, you're paying one of the top quarterbacks, right? You're paying one of the top cornerbacks, defensive backs. You're paying one of the top defensive ends. You're paying one of the top running backs, right? You're paying one of the top receivers, whether you know it or not. Amari Cooper's deal is worth $20 million against the cap this year, right? So you now start to see the top-notch guys and high-priced individuals, and you look at the offensive line, who we say, if you bring in Ethan Pocic and you re-sign him, you now have 5 offensive linemen making upwards of $10 to $15 million. So you look at it, you start to say to yourself, okay, is that worth our 7 wins that we're getting? Because teams like the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're not paying their franchise quarterback that amount of money, right? You look at Purdy. They went to the AFC Championship game. They're not paying Purdy, NFC Championship. They're not paying him like that. Jalen Hurts is still on a rookie deal with making second-round money. So the teams that are in the money that you got to pay a Travis Kelce, you're paying the Patrick Mahomes. Guess what? You don't see the Tyreek Hill. You don't see those guys anymore. Right? You got to win with the Sky Moores. You got to win with some of the other lesser guys, the Pachenkos at running back, right? So these are the type of things that Cleveland Browns are in the territory of. We got a top-notch roster, like we paying a bunch of people, but we not in no championship. So that is where the rubber meets the road. And I think that's going to be a big thing this year, Jeff, is this salary cap and how they manage it.
Yeah, and I know, like, everybody – like, and I'm seeing a lot of fan and just their general reaction. Guys, everybody thought the belief was going to be $225 million. So none of this is a surprise to anybody in an NFL front office. It's not like found money, you rolled over in your mattress. Now, this is kind of pretty much where everybody figured it was going to go. You got to remember there was a little bit of a tax for a couple of years for COVID. And one of the things that's going to help here with the cap situation, these last 2 seasons, 17-game seasons. So more chance to monetize, more chance to get money, obviously, into the cap for teams to spend. For the Browns, it's just going to be about a flexibility position. You know what I'm saying? Do you like player A at this number as opposed to player B at that number? We know that there's a lot of flexibility with a lot of contracts within this room. There's a lot of restructuring you can do to Amari Cooper's contract. You can do some restructuring, obviously, as well to Deshaun Watson's to create even more cap space. It gives the team that option. You have money coming off the books. You have some players that are linebacker positions as of right now. Sione Taki's contract is over and done with, as is as Anthony Walker is as well. Where are you with John Johnson III's contract? Meanwhile, then you have other things to look at. You with Donovan Peoples-Jones going into year 4. Are you ready to maybe make, an extension talks possible with that? I'm not saying they're going to, but Grant Delpit in the same situation going into year 4 on what was originally a 4-year deal. So a lot of work to be done there. And it's funny because these are the conversations that aren't nearly as sexy this time of year as when you're talking about team and salary cap and structure of contracts, but they're probably the most crucial. And, the Browns have done a good job here for the most part of the last couple of years, being able to extend all these players. Now, when G talks about, Nick Chubb, Garrett Bush, Nick Chubb, Myles Garrett.
I wish I was in that role.
Yeah, G wouldn't be here right now. He was rocking one of those deals. I'm going to tell you that right now. Myles Garrett. And, of course, Denzel Ward. You talk about contracts like that and, settled players are happy. But, the language of the contracts is certainly giving the Browns major flexibility to make moves like Deshaun Watson, obviously, of course. So you look at this type of stuff here. And this is, anybody who does not, gets nervous when analytics is spoken. This is a lot of big reason where analytics comes in. It's basically pouring through every drop of information there is. So finding a way to structure contracts to make sure your players are satisfied and making sure that you are still operating under the salary cap. It's just the way it's got to be. So nothing really of a surprise here. Obviously, we ended up with an Eagles and Chiefs championship game. Ethan Pocic, this is a conversation, that you've figured now at the end of January. So the conversation is going to go on for probably about 6-7 weeks about Ethan Pocic. Are the Browns interested? Is he interested in staying? Because that is one big thing with Ethan Pocic. It's one thing to go sign the contract, but you don't want to be the guy, come October playing in a new city and you're hearing, well, what in the world we signed Ethan Pocic for $30 million for? He stinks. So I mean, if you had success here, maybe you're not so quick to run from success, and I'm not 5 million, 7. Look, it is money that most of us are ever going to see or understand in our life. But you would also maybe like to be able to put together, 3-4 more seasons of $5-7 million. You know what I'm saying? 1 year at 10 million, you go flame out. Then Ethan Posic's in the same situation when he came here to Cleveland. And then the cap situation, about $225 million to spend. Obviously Andrew Berry and his crew to this point have been very smart, have been very diligent in their approach about the type of player they bring in, how much they pay him, the type of player they will extend. So a lot going on here, G. And, with this here, 2 weeks away from the Super Bowl, really, really amping up as the Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl practices kick off this week. Browns have been basically, in off-season mode, but this is really, really off-season mode. Now 30 teams involved. Off-season mode is right off the charts as Andrew Berry and the crew are headed down to Mobile, Alabama.
Yeah, no doubt. Very interesting as things kick up a little bit. I'm interested in seeing some of the first guys they bring in. I think the first guys that they bring in are going to really tell you what direction they're going to move in. And it's interesting because, the Browns don't have they're not flooded with cap space, but they do have some things that they can do to improve the roster. It's just about a mix of guys, new guys they're bringing in, or guys they look to restructure or to, potentially, let go and see what the mix of guys are going to be in that.
Yep. So, I mean, look, again, fun weekend. I thought the games yesterday, went the way we thought they were going to. I mean, for San Francisco, it's just brutal. I mean, it's just a brutal way because he really didn't even get a chance to compete. For Kayvon Wallace, the Philadelphia Eagles defensive back, why in the world would you pick a fight with Trent Williams? Are you serious? Because it started and then Trent Williams ended it. Like, good Lord, man. I think I'd rather walk in an insane asylum with weapons, give them to these nuts people and fight them. I ain't fighting Trent Williams.
He was feeling himself a little. Sometimes you be doing all right. You feeling yourself a little bit too much and you get brought back down to earth.
He got brought down to earth. Real. So again, we appreciate all of you who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day, whether it's here on YouTube, on your favorite podcast platform, on the Roku app, YouTube. Make sure you are subscribed to the show. Make sure you have the notifications on. Obviously, big number over the weekend. I think about another 50 or so migrated their way here. So we appreciate you all for that. Throw some likes on the episodes first. It just helps with the algorithm, more people being able to find us. So we do appreciate that. Garrett Bush, part of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, Monday through Friday, 11-1. A little rough week for the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show last week. A lot of folks down, kind of looked like the Niners did yesterday, but everybody's healthy, starting to come back around. They had the youngins. I mean, it kind of looked like it was Bring Your Kid to Work Day the other day where they had all the youngins on the couch doing the show. But good for them. God bless them. Held it down. Make sure 92.3 The Fan, you check Garrett out there. Saturdays, always numerous appearances to catch Garrett's work over there with the Fan. Make sure you're following at GBush91. Myself, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. And again, we appreciate you guys so much. For me, I've always enjoyed this part of the year. Roster building. This has been something I've been a fan of, regardless of what sport it is, since I was a kid. You see a team play all season and it either goes one way or it goes other. So the key is, how do we maintain this and keep making it better? Or, man, we suck. How are we not going to suck anymore? So we're going to see how the Browns are going to do it. We're going to see how Andrew Berry is going to do it. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on a yellow B. Let's go Browns.